Christ was the end of the law. For centuries, the Mosaic Law stood as the standard for righteousness, guiding Israel in obedience and worship. Yet, no one could fully uphold its demands. The law revealed sin, but it could not remove it. Then came Christ, the one who fulfilled the law, not by abolishing it, but by completing its purpose. Romans 10 verse 4 declares, "For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes." This verse marks a transition from striving under the law to receiving righteousness through faith. No longer must humanity labor under the weight of legal requirements. Christ has finished the work, offering grace and freedom to all who believe. This truth transforms how we approach faith, worship, and spiritual identity. Instead of seeking righteousness through rules, we embrace the gift of grace. Christ's fulfillment of the law is not the end of holiness. It is the beginning of true righteousness, found in Him alone. Circumcision has been a significant practice in various religious traditions, particularly in Judaism and Islam, where it is often seen as a covenantal or purification rite. However, in Christianity, the New Testament makes it clear that circumcision is not required for salvation or righteousness. Paul addresses this directly in Galatians 5 verse 6, stating, "For in Christ Jesus neither circumcision nor uncircumcision counts for anything, but only faith working through love." Circumcision was originally a physical sign of the covenant between God and Abraham, marking the Israelites as set apart. Genesis 17 verses 10 to 14. However, as the biblical narrative unfolds, circumcision transitions from a physical requirement to a spiritual reality in the new covenant. Romans 2 verses 28 to 29 KJV. 28 For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision, which is outward in the flesh. 29 But he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. Old Covenant, physical circumcision, required for all male Israelites as a sign of belonging to God's people, symbolized separation from the nations and obedience to the law. New Covenant, circumcision of the heart. Paul teaches that true circumcision is spiritual, not physical. Romans 2 verse 29. Believers are set apart by faith in Christ, not by external rituals. Colossians 2 verses 11 to 12 describes a circumcision made without hands, referring to salvation through Christ. Circumcision in the Old Testament foreshadowed the removal of sin and transformation of the heart. In Christ, believers experience a spiritual circumcision, where the old nature is cut away and they walk in newness of life. Philippians 3 verse 3 states, "For we are the circumcision, who worship God in the Spirit, rejoice in Christ Jesus, and have no confidence in the flesh." Tithing is an interesting topic when viewed through the lens of covenant transitions. Under the Old Covenant, tithing was a legal requirement tied to Israel's theocratic system, supporting the Levitical priesthood, temple worship, and community needs. However, with the arrival of the New Covenant, the focus shifts from obligation to grace-based giving. Old Covenant, law-based giving. Tithing was mandated as part of Israel's religious and civil structure. Leviticus 27 verses 30 to 32, Numbers 18:21-24. It was tied to the temple system, which Christ fulfilled and replaced with direct access to God. New Covenant, Spirit-led generosity. The New Testament does not command tithing as a legal requirement, but emphasizes cheerful, voluntary giving. 2 Corinthians 9 verse 7. Believers are encouraged to give as led by the Spirit, rather than adhering to a fixed percentage. The Bible does not teach that failing to tithe results in eternal condemnation. Salvation is based on faith in Jesus Christ, not financial contributions. Ephesians 2 verses 8 to 9. While tithing was part of the Mosaic Law, the New Testament emphasizes grace-based giving rather than mandatory percentages. Some preachers have made extreme statements about tithing, such as claiming it determines one's eternal destiny. However, biblical teaching makes it clear that righteousness comes through faith, not financial obligation. Old Testament tithing. Mandated giving. Israelites were required to give a tenth of their produce and income to support the Levites, temple worship, and the poor. Numbers 18:21, Deuteronomy 14 verses 22 to 29. Multiple tithes. Some scholars estimate that when all tithes were combined, Israelites gave closer to 23% annually. Law-based obligation. Tithing was part of the Mosaic Law, reinforcing Israel's covenant responsibilities. New Testament giving. Spirit-led generosity. Instead of a fixed percentage, believers are encouraged to give cheerfully and willingly. 2 Corinthians 9 verse 7. No legal requirement. The New Testament does not command tithing as a law, but emphasizes stewardship and generosity. Faith over obligation. Giving is an act of worship, reflecting gratitude rather than duty. When giving is framed as an obligation or tied to fear-based teachings, people may feel pressured rather than inspired to contribute. Unfortunately, some have been hurt by manipulative practices, making them hesitant to engage with the church at all. For centuries, the Mosaic Law stood as the standard for righteousness, guiding Israel in obedience and worship. Yet, no one could fully uphold its demands. The law revealed sin, but it could not remove it. Then came Christ, the one who fulfilled the law, not by abolishing it, but by completing its purpose.